Nancy, everybody's here that needs to be here. Is that correct? Yeah. So Nancy's given me some notes to follow because we have a new way of doing things with the online platform. And I know Mayor Bailey and Councillor Pierce, you're much more familiar with the online platform in terms of council meetings. So if I need to have a correction, please let me know. So just some housekeeping. We'll stay muted unless we're speaking, just to avoid any background noises or what have you. Because I can see you all on this tile, if you need to speak, just raise your hand so that we can get you into the queue. If for some reason your internet cuts out or you get cut off, just try to join back into the meeting. We will continue on with the meeting process, but if you do some reason have to do that, that would be great. And then Nancy normally just takes attendance for us, but with this, and just as a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. You'll see up in your top left-hand corner a little icon that says recording. So this is a recorded meeting, and it is still being streamed as well. So it's not a closed meeting in that regard. When and if we go into in camera, Nancy, we would pause for a minute to allow Nancy to pause the recording, to stop the recording. And if there was anybody in the meeting at that time that shouldn't be for part of the in camera, we would ask them to leave. So that we can still do in camera, just we have to be more intentional with some of the things we need to do here. So just for Nancy's notes, we'll just ask you to indicate that you're present. Mayor Bailey. Oh.
I'm still here.
He's still here. Councillor Pierce.
Present.
Member Brown.
Present.
Member Verhey. And he's present.
Present, sorry.
Yep. And Nancy, we have and we have Inspector Anderson and Acting Staff Sergeant Hampson with us as well. And then, yep, congratulations. We have Robin and Heather and Adam with the county. And I think, Nancy, Jeff is a IT person on your end?
That's correct.
Right. And then the stream is the stream. Okay, so everybody's got that figured out. Let's start off with getting the agenda reviewed and approved. Nancy issued an addendum to everybody, which would be the items in red. Is there anything that needs to be added at this time? Jim?
I'm wondering if we can request to go on camera at the end just to have a in-depth discussion about the meeting that we had with the towing group.
So the tow, the discussion from the towing group in camera?
Yes.
Inspector Anderson, do you have an in-camera topic as well today?
I think I'll defer it if that's okay with you, Madam Chair. We just have to have some discussions about what, with OPP policy, what we're allowed to go on camera on in Zoom and what we can't with the rest of the platform. So there's nothing urgent. We were going to bring up the SIU conversation, but that can be deferred. There's nothing urgent tonight.
Okay. So Nancy, just help me here. If we go in camera for the discussion about the meeting we had and some specifics about the tow contract in camera, that is fine, but any decisions about the tow contract would be out of camera.
That's correct.
Okay, is that okay, Jim?
Talking about identifiable individuals, then you can go in camera about that.
That's what we'll do then. Okay, anything else for the agenda then? Seeing none, we'll have a motion to approve the agenda. Mayor Bailey and seconded by Marty, and everybody in favor? Great. See, first step, we're doing it. Now's our time to declare any pecuniary interests. Anybody have any to declare? None declared, Nancy? Our first thing on the agenda is Heather Mifflin is going to review our draft 2021 Police Service Board budget with us.
Good morning. Through you, Madam Chair. So this is the draft 2021 Police Services Board budget. I'll just walk through it. There is an increase to the salary and benefits line. In 2020, the training and development line was increased by 7,500 for the new Police Act training. Of course, that didn't happen in 2020, so it will still stay there for 2021. I assume that will be an option, hopefully. Working down the public relations and awards, last year there was a one-time amount of 8,500 added for a publication. That was one time, so it has been removed. I'm not sure whether that, of course, the publication didn't happen in 2020 because of everything else. So I'm not sure what you want to do going forward there. And then Robin did let me know for legal services that you did want $2,000 added to your budget. Are there any questions or?
So Heather, I'll ask a question about the publication. So I think our best laid plans went astray for 2020 with COVID and other priorities. But I believe last year around this time, we talked about a community piece. Inspector Anderson, I think it looked like a little bit of a newspaper type publication. I still think that would be something of value. I'm not sure how the other members feel. Is it possible that we can still, I know we didn't use it this year, but is it something we can still include in our budget for 2021, hoping for sunnier days to be able to get that done?
We can add it back in if that's what the board wishes.
Marty, did you have your hand up?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, just a comment on that. I would think that, just thinking back to that document, I think it would be a good idea in light of everything that's happening, because it's a way to communicate with the local community if we're trying to do the right thing and stay away from gatherings and physical contact. So I would think it's actually more important now than last year.
Any other questions for Heather about the budget? The part-time earnings, then there's an adjustment to that then? Is that part of the,
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, there is the same percentage increase is put across all the non-union, including the board and council positions.
so if we added back in the funds for the publication, was there anything else that anybody would like to ask Heather with respect to the budget? Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair, through you. So just the line there for training and development, I understand that it wasn't done last year, so it's going to stay there for 2021. But I'm just curious because I don't see anything for 2018, nothing for 2019, and it's in 20, like the percentage of increases are just from the previous year. I'm just curious as to, was there anything in 18 and 19, or just all of a sudden last year did we just put that 12.5 or 12.5 in there?
Through you, Madam Chair, there was 2,500 in conferences, and that's where most of the money has been previously spent. It's been out of the conferences line, but it's really more training and development covers everything. So we moved the budget line down, the full budget down to training. So there was 5,000 in there originally, and then 7,500 was added to cover the new Police Act training.
Okay, so if I could just add on to that, so is that part of the virtual training that we're on? Is it the 27th or something like that? Do we pay for that? That I don't know if, Madam Chair, if you know that, or Heather, or?
My understanding is that it's free through the ministry, but it, I think, was only step one of what we had talked about doing. And obviously, if most of us had gone to the conference and had the training seminars there would have been an extra cost. So we would have allocated that as training as well.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So Heather, what do you need from us then in terms of the request for the publication to be added back in, or anything else with that regard?
If just a resolution from the board to add that back in.
Okay. Any other questions for Heather on the budget? Everybody's happy with the, I think it's important to have the legal back in there. That's good that we've talked about that quite a bit. Hopefully we never have to use that, but you never know. Okay, so where's my notes from Nancy? Nancy. So we will need a motion to approve the budget, but I think, Nancy, how do you want to word that? Will the motion be inclusive of having the additional training or the publication added back in, or are they two separate motions?
We can have that in one motion to approve the budget with the addition of the $7,000 for the public relations and awards.
Was it 7,000 or 8,500?
8,500.
8,500.
Yeah, 8,500.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. So with that being said, then is there someone that's prepared to make that motion? Councillor Pierce, Member Brown will second it. So the motion is to approve the draft 2021 Police Service Board budget with the additional $8,500 added back in for public relations. Okay, all in favor of that motion? Great, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Okay, so then we move to our last meeting over at the Brent Sports Complex, our meeting on September 15th. Everybody's had a chance to review the minutes. Is there someone who's prepared to move those for adoption? Mayor Bailey, Member Brown, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, business arising from the minutes. We have just a couple of items here. Robin is going to review the report that she prepared for us. So I'll turn it over to Robin now.
Sorry, just had to unmute. So let me get to the report. So with the report, we're just asking that the board receives the report for information and that the 2021 false alarm fees be approved at the same rate for 2020. In the background section, you can see what the rates were prior to January 1st, 2020 and what they are subsequent to that. And then in the report, you can see that the number of false alarms in the county has increased from 114 in 2019 to 134 in 2020 year to date, which is a 17.5% increase. With the new billing fees, the year-to-date revenue for 2020 is $4,450, which is up from the 2019 revenue of $1,650. The total number of invoices issued after the first warning was only up by 1 for 2020, yet the number of warnings was up by 11. So that's indicating that the new fees are having the intended effect as less alarm owners are having repeat offenses. And just to clarify, the OPP sends the county a list of all the alarms that were called in, whether they attended or didn't attend. And if the OPP don't attend, we don't bill for them. There is a difference between what the OPP sends us and what we actually either send a bill or a warning letter for. And that's because the county will back out any alarms that were actual County of Brant alarms. I've gone through every month and there are some discrepancies, and most of them are related to alarms that are the county's own alarms, or sometimes the OPP actually attend even though it's been canceled and called in as canceled. So those adjustments are made by staff, and the net effect is what's listed in the report. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Well, then, Robin, that would then, when we hear or when we talk about calls from OPP, the difference then between what they record and what the county would be either canceled calls or county properties or something along those lines.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. There's a justifiable reason if we don't send either a warning letter or a bill. There's always a documented reason for it.
Does anybody have any questions on the follow-up that we had asked Robin to put together for us? It's good to see that the fee structure is working. That's good to hear. And unfortunate that the calls or that the alarm calls are up in 2020, but hopefully that will rectify itself at some point. So for this then, we'll receive the report for information, I think, at this point. So we'll need a motion. If there's no other discussion on this topic, we'll need a motion to receive it, please, for information. Councillor Pierce, seconder for that. Mayor Bailey, all those in favor? Carrie, thank you. Thank you, Robin, for following up on that for us. We have the tow contract as a follow-up item from the minutes as well, and I have it in my update, and Jim's asked for an in-camera discussion, and I'm wondering if it would be okay if we kind of consolidate on the agenda so that we're not reviewing it multiple times. I'm not sure if Nancy, that's okay.
Yes, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll defer this piece until it comes up on the agenda later on, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, so then that takes us into our detachment commander's reports, and I'll turn it over to you, Inspector Anderson.
And good morning again, everybody. Just to start out with the staffing and human resource updates. As you're all aware, Staff Sergeant Angela Ferguson will be doing a temporary assignment at regional headquarters for the next 3 months. So Andrew Hampson is going to be stepping into her chair as the acting operations manager for our detachment for that same period of time. And then we've also backfilled Andrew's administrative sergeant position as well with the developmental opportunity for one of our constables as well. So we'll be working with that team for the next few months until Angela returns. Currently as well, we are having, due to COVID and a number of different casinos that have shut down in Ontario, the OPP has had the opportunity to put some of that staffing back to the front line. So we've benefited from that. We've received an officer from the Alcohol and Gaming Commission who's been frontline uniformed for us Monday to Friday through the days. So they're assisting platoon and with different focus patrols and things that we have. We have received 2 lateral transfers that I spoke about in the past. One officer was from Pickle Lake. He's arrived. And the other one is from Norfolk County, and they've both been assigned to frontline policing duties as well. We also have 2 retirements at the end of the month. So Constable Neil Smith and Constable Elizabeth Pottruff. Their last day with the OPP will be October 31st, and that's after 30 years of service. Both of them have done the majority of their career within Brant County and have been here for long-standing periods of time. So we'll be doing something for them while being socially distanced, which makes it a little bit more difficult for retirement celebrations, but we'll make sure that we do something. We still continue. The only public complaint that we have is the one that was, it was actually in relation to a 2019 incident, but it was filed and all the paperwork was done in 2020. And that's where we stand. In relation to Focus Patrol, so we have now closed our Highway 24 North Focus Patrol that we had ongoing. That was closed in the middle of October. We had 154 hours dedicated to the enforcement, extra enforcement on the highway, which related to 108 charges being laid, 68 of those speeding, 9 stunt drive charge, which we've all talked about before, which is more than 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. A few no insurance charges and 28 other Highway Traffic Act offenses that we've had up there. in addition to 22 warnings that were issued. What we're planning on doing for the rest of October is focusing on some increased foot patrol and higher visibility in the communities as well as we go into winter, which makes foot patrol a little bit more challenging for us during the winter months. And then that's going to lead us into November, and we want to run the community focused patrols again. So if you recall, we did that in June, I believe it was, in soliciting all of the town councillors in their zone to identify 2 areas that they would like police to spend some time and attention on within each zone. So this time around, what I was hoping, Madam Chair, is that I could obtain those 2 areas from the Police Services Board, and whether that's effectively communicated between the PSB and council. But just thinking that it might be more of a PSB role to put those forward to us from consultations from council or however else the PSB wishes to solicit those. But we will be looking for two areas per zone. Our zones, as we talked about before, reflect the same as the council, the ward zones, except Paris, the 2 ward councils are 1 zone for us. And what we'll do is we will assign, we'll break it down 2 weeks at a time. So 2 weeks will be dedicated to each one of those community focused patrols during the month. In relation to COVID-19 updates, we're continuing with our COVID-19 policies and restrictions here at the detachment. So our front door continues to be fully open now. There are signs on the front door that only allow 1 person in the lobby at one time, and everyone who enters has to be masked. Also, in relation to, I'm still taking part in the emergency operations centers. Bless you, Councillor Pierce. The emergency operations center teleconferences that we have, one also with just Brant County, and then the one joint one that we have with the city. In relation to the number of occurrences, because I haven't really reported on this previously, we've responded to approximately 184 occurrences in relation to COVID-19. So that would be anything from emergency orders, Quarantine Act checks, anything in relation to COVID, we're able to track. So we're at about 184 currently. Also of interest in relation to the Quarantine Act, all of that information is generated by the RCMP. They then disseminate the information to the Provincial Operations Center, and then the information gets disseminated down to us in relation to quarantine checks. So with those checks of interest, we used to get the high-risk checks that have been identified for us to go and check. We now get all of the quarantine checks to be completed in the county, including low, medium, and high risk. So we're still, between myself and Acting Staff Sergeant Hampson, we're going through those and deciding which ones that we're actioning and which ones that we are not. So we've upped our checks in relation to the Quarantine Act as well. And again, those would be in relation to travel and would be forwarded to the RCMP through the CBSA, Canadian Services and Border Agency. And as well, we're still part of the joint enforcement team, although not as busy as what we were in the initial stages. And that's still a partnership between public health, the OPP, and bylaw within the county. And there still is that active email address for complaints for anyone who wishes to put anything through. The only thing that we do ask is that the OPP itself is used just for emergent responses or anything in relation to criminal or provincial acts that result from any type of COVID incident. Also in relation to COVID, I'll just touch briefly on the criminal records checks because I've sent emails out both to all the councillors as well as the PSB and Mayor Bailey. During COVID, the OPP decided to go online, to use an online platform. because our front doors of our detachments were locked, and we were also down to skeleton strength for our administrative clerks, as many other employers were doing in the province. And we were also focused on primarily healthcare and healthcare supports to be able to get those through, to get people out into the workplace and get people helping with COVID in the front lines. That platform was set up for that type of volume, which was much more minimal than what we would have during normal times. As we became to open up more and started doing more criminal record checks, we decided to keep the platform online. The volume became quite overwhelming. And as such, all of the criminal record check process is now being pushed back to detachment. So we will be following the exact same process that we were following pre-COVID. The OPP is still working on an online platform that they now know the work they have to do to go back to the drawing table with that, to deal with the volume. To give you some type of idea, Brant, our detachment here alone, we do about 2,800 criminal record checks a year. So it's quite a volume, and that's just one detachment out of the province. I also have on here in relation to vehicle noise, because that's been a topic that we've spoken about quite a few times at this PSB. What I've done, we have an officer here who's interested in development and promotion. So what we've done is we have assigned him to lead a group, some type of joint working group between the county bylaw and the community itself and us, to come up with a plan for the spring. So the invitation has also gone out to any councillors who wish to take part in that as well, if they want to sit around the table or see what we're planning. And we've also had conversations at this committee about possible bylaw changes or enhancements or things like that. So we'll put anything that comes from that committee forward to the Police Service Board, and then obviously it'll be up to the Police Service Board how we action that moving forward with the council. Also of highlight was the Community Street Crimes Unit warrant that we executed on September 17th. That was in relation to a Controlled Drugs and Substances Act warrant with a marijuana facility in Onondaga. We're just going to close the blinds here. It's getting a little bit sunny in downtown Paris here. It resulted in approximately 2,300 kilograms of marijuana plants being seized. The one thing I do want to speak to on this was the joint effort, and it was fantastic working between bylaw, the Electrical Safety Authority, our CSDU members and our platoon members, and the county as well. It all came together, and it certainly made that execution go a lot smoothly. So I appreciate all the help from the county and bylaw on that as well. And charges were not only laid by us, but there were several charges laid by the county and bylaw and the Electrical Authority in relation to that warrant. In relation to, actually, before I move on to trends and actions, because I forgot to put this into the report. So on the 23rd of September, we had our Regional Highway Safety Division team. They came down to Brant County and they did a commercial motor vehicle blitz for a day. So just to give you some type of highlights from that, they had 18 vehicles stopped, and out of those 18, they ended up doing 14 inspections. There was a number of different charges laid, about 21 different charges were laid in relation to both rules of the road as well as inspection violations. So it's great to see that they're down here doing some inspections. They mostly focus on the 403 and then just our truck routes that we have as well, and trying to pull trucks in and make sure that the safety requirements are being upheld, as well as the truck routes. So that was on the 23rd of September. In relation to trends and actions that we're seeing for September, violent crime was down 50% in September compared to September last year. Year to date, though, we've seen a 15% reduction in violent crime in the county. So we've seen 129 incidents this year compared to 151 at the same time last year. We also continue to see a reduction in sexual assault incidents that are reported to police. So far in 2020. If you remember, in 2019, I was reporting that the sexual assault incidents that we were having reported were actually up 62%. So this reduction is actually bringing us back to the 2018 numbers. It's nothing that's out of the norm. More so was last year with the spike that we saw in relation to those incidents. Also, to speak to that, a lot of that spike, if you recall that we were talking about, had to do with youth. And a lot of those calls were in relation to online and social media incidents that were happening. And it also coincided with the return to school. So whether that has impacted us as well with COVID and the return to school that we've seen, we aren't seeing the same numbers as what we saw last year. In relation to property crime, we continue to see significant reductions in property crime numbers. September actually is the first month that we saw a bit of a spike, or the numbers return to the 2019 numbers. However, the category of vehicle entries skews that number. So when we look at all other property crime categories other than theft from motor vehicles are showing a 5 to 29% decrease. Overall, we've seen a 15% decrease so far this year in property crime. And the most significant decreases have been in the categories of theft over $5,000, which usually goes hand in hand with theft of motor vehicle, mischief and break and enter, which we've seen a 29% decrease in the theft overcharges, 26% decrease in mischief, and a 25% decrease in break and enter, which are all good numbers for trends. In relation to motor vehicle collisions, we continue to see a reduction this year as compared to 2019. 33% reduction really in our total volume of collisions so far. Property damage collisions have decreased by 40%. We've also seen an overall decrease in personal injury collisions by 27%. We did see a spike, if you remember, in personal injury collisions coming into June and July. We've now seen that subside. But what we have seen is an increase in our fatal injury collisions in the county. So to date, we have 5 recorded, as to last year we had 0. The trends that we're seeing in these collisions are in relation to motorcycles this year. We've had more than half of our fatal injury collisions have been in relation to motorcycles. So you will see us next year trying to do a bit of a road safety awareness for people with motorcycles. Also included in those numbers will be non-roadway fatalities, such as the unfortunate drowning that we had in relation to the water skier, or the jet ski, sorry, on the Grand River, because it involves a motor vehicle and it's a waterway. Also included in those numbers would be the farm incident in St. George that we had, because it involved a moving motor vehicle at that time, which was a tractor. So although these numbers are higher, just keep in mind they aren't all roadway fatalities in relation to that. But back to the collisions, again, we've seen a 30% decrease in total collisions compared to 2019. What this translates to is 424 total collisions so far this year, compared to 605 we had seen by this time last year. So in relation to our statistics in relation to charges, these would be in relation to July, not September, because of the delay that we have in that database. So from January 1st to the end of July, Brant County members have issued 2,860 total charges in the county. 1,738 are Highway Traffic Act related, 851 are Criminal Code related, and 271 are other, such as liquor license, trespass to property, automobile insurance, or the Ontario Cannabis Act. 1,738 highway traffic act offenses. Out of those, 1,101 are for Big Four related charges. And in the month of July, total charges were up by 24% compared to July of 2019. This increase can be attributed to the 85% increase that we had in relation to speeding charges in July in the county, as well as an increase in seatbelt and impaired driving charges that we saw. Initially in the year, we saw quite a decrease in the number of impaired driving charges that we had compared to 2019. But also, if you remember, in 2019, there was quite a spike in the number. We almost doubled the number of charges we had in 2019. So again, relating this back to 2018 numbers, 2019 was the spike, not necessarily the dip this year. But we have seen our charges return to on par with 2019 now as the year's gone ahead. In the last, in June and July, we saw a lot more charges again, as we saw with people taking back to the roadways as well. In relation to mental health incidents, they were up 6% in September. And those are the level 1 incidents. And if you recall, when I talk about those are sheerly calls for service that we get that are mental health primary call. So we know we are going to a call that has someone involved in a mental health crisis. And we've seen a decrease in level 2 incidents by 4%. Level 2 incidents, if you remember too, that could be us attending to the domestic dispute with underlying issues of mental health or so on and so forth. So we try to keep track of all of that as well. Year to date, we've seen an 11% decrease in level 1 mental health incidents and a 4% decrease in all level mental health incidents. To give that perspective in relation to numbers, we've had 165 so far in 2020 versus 172 that we had at this point in time in 2019. Speaking on that though, in my conversations that I've had, and I've asked St. Leonard's that I can share this with you, they're seeing 115% increase in their coast side of the house. So if you remember, MCERT for us is the primary response to mental health incidents, where the mental health clinician rides with our police officer. The COAST program takes referrals from the hospital, from EMS, from all different community support services for people that need that mental health support. In addition to Brantford Police and OPP are the most significant contributors to that COAST referral program. But those numbers are up 115% on the COAST support side, which I think is significant for everybody to know. In relation to domestic incidents, they decreased 9% in September. However, year to date, we've seen a 6% increase so far this year. This year, we responded to 168 domestic incidents as opposed to 158 by this time last year. We have talked about the significant decreases in relation to 911 calls that we've had over the last couple of PSB meetings, so I won't go into that in depth. In relation to patrol hours, in September, Brant County members completed 722 cruiser patrol hours, 69 foot patrol hours, and 7 motorcycle patrol hours. In relation to our motorcycle patrol, you will see those numbers down. We used to have 3, and I'm going to look at Andrew to make sure. We had 3 operators. One of those operators has now moved to community street crimes, and one just laterally transferred to Burlington Detachment. So the one member that we have left, we only have 1 motorcycle operator at this point in time. So we are going to be looking for more operators in the detachment. The only hurdle that we have for that is the OPP requires an operator to have an M license before being able to be a motorcycle operator with the OPP. That has been a change in the recent years. So we will be looking to see if we have more interest, especially with the new people that we've had come in lately. So we'll be looking at beefing that up for next year, but that will explain the decreases. So far in 2020, Brant members have conducted 1,048 hours of foot patrol. It's a 36% increase compared to the same time frame in 2019. We've also conducted so far in 2020, 7,813 hours of cruiser patrol, 77 hours of motorcycle patrol, 259 hours of ATV patrol, 112 hours of bicycle patrol, and then the foot patrol that I just noted to you, and 180 hours of school patrol, which obviously is down from what we saw last year because of the school resource officer program being suspended due to COVID this year, and that happened in March. Also, overall zone duty hours have seen a 20% increase so far in 2020 compared to 2019. And the most significant increases, although we're seeing significant increases all across the zones, is East Zone and on the provincial highway side. Pending any questions, Madam Chair, that completes my report.
You're on mute. There.
So let's open the floor if there are any questions to Inspector Anderson. Go ahead, Councillor Pierce.
If nobody else has any, I'll go. I've just got a couple here. So I'm gonna backtrack a few here. As far as the police checks, is that an assigned position within the OPP? Because you talk about the numbers 2,800 just for our attachment. That's huge. Is there somebody that's dedicated full time to that, or is it just certain staff when they have availability they try and get through those?
I'll defer that. Our acting staff sergeant Hampson will be able to address that for you.
It is a primary duty for one of our civilian members, and a secondary duty for some of the other civilian members. So our primary is off.
Sorry, I'm having troubles hearing you. I don't know if anybody else is.
Yeah.
I'll take it from the top again. Is that better?
Yeah. Not yet.
It's a primary duty of one of our civilian members.
Okay.
If she is away on vacation, etc., then it's a secondary duty of another civilian member, so that we're always able to fulfill that service. But it is essentially a full-time position for a civilian member.
Okay. No, and that's kind of the answer I was looking for, because that's huge numbers to try and have somebody do their own job and do that as an addition. So that's great on that. Appreciate it. As far as the this is all through you, Madam Chair. To the inspector, you spoke of the vehicle noise and what's going on with that, and I would absolutely love to be part of that roundtable when that happens. As you're probably well aware, I know Norfolk has come out recently with some articles regarding the sick and tired of the noise, as has London. I'm not sure if there's been any conversations with those jurisdictions as to what they're doing and those articles, but I guess it's not nice to know we're not the only ones in this situation, but I think as people can probably understand, this problem is bigger than we think it is, and there's many people that are having the same problem with the loud mufflers and such. So would absolutely love to be part of that. You spoke of the CSU warrant. That later on in my council thing, I was going to say it, but as you spoke of it, I will say it now. On behalf of council, it was brought up at our last meeting that we'd like to thank you and the OPP for your part in that, because that's a huge cache, I'll call it, of marijuana that will not be on the streets. So thank you to you and everybody on your side that was involved with that raid on behalf of council. I'd like to say that. You spoke of vehicle collisions down 33%. Now, do we feel, and I think we've kind of touched on this before, we went probably 2 or 3 months through COVID where there was minimal vehicles on the road. Do we feel that is the biggest factor in the reduction of accidents, or do we feel that with the focus patrols and such that that you folks were doing in the hot spots, or do we think it was a combination? I'm curious of your feedback on that. What you think is the biggest factor in that reduction?
I'll ask Andrew for his opinion on this too, but what I feel is it's twofold. So in the first quarter of 2020, we were actually anxiously awaiting the results of the work that we've done with the focus patrols to see the effect on personal injury collisions. And And we did see that reduction in the first quarter of the personal injury collisions. So I would say that tended to be in relation to the focus patrol efforts that we were doing, but significantly traffic and the number of vehicles on the road was down. Not that I can quantify what that value would be with traffic counts, but it was significantly reduced. So I would tend to say post-COVID and post-March, it definitely had to do with the volume of traffic, the decrease in volume of traffic that we were seeing on the roadways. And I don't know, Andrew, if you have anything else in addition to that. So the initial quarter would have been in relation to the focus patrols that we had ongoing, but I truly believe anything past that had to do solely with the decreased traffic volume.
Okay, and through you, Madam Chair, I appreciate that answer, because I've had a few people talk to me in regards to with the focus patrols and stuff like that, and with the lack of collisions, and their response to me was, oh, it's because there wasn't any cars on the road. And I said, kind of alluded to what you just spoke to there, and the fact that that was a factor, but also with the data that we've captured in the hot spots that you're doing these focus patrols on, that's absolutely part of the rationale behind it as well. So I'm glad you went there, and that's the message that I've given back to people when they try and push it all onto the fact that there was just no vehicles on the road. Like you say, definitely a factor, but I feel that there's more to it, and that more to me is the focus patrols and stuff you're doing. So thank you for that. And then one other thing you just kind of alluded to at the end when you spoke of the motorcycles, you said that an officer would need an M license in order to ride a motorcycle for the OPP. Don't you need an M license period to ride a motorcycle, or is it a special factor that if you're a police officer, you could ride a bike without one?
No, and I'll explain that a little bit better. So it used to be with the motorcycle program that any officer who wished to become a motorcycle operator within the OPP would have to go through the same licensing as anybody would to get up to that M license.
Right.
But it was all rolled into one package with the Ministry of Transportation and the OPP. And again, I'm looking at Andrew to make sure I'm not misspeaking here. So they would still achieve the same licensing. The issue, and then we had a motorcycle review, I think, that happened in the province probably 2 years ago. And as a result of that motorcycle review, they felt that the OPP wanted to revert to a more experienced rider that then comes into a policing environment to operate a motorcycle. Because it's not just driving a motorcycle around, it's also doing police duties while you're on a motorcycle, which makes it more challenging with a very large Harley. So they decided to move to trying to recruit people into that program that have a personal experience and their own bike and a longer history of riding, to then move into the OPP program itself. So that's what the change was. There were several changes with the provincial review, but that was one that had more of a significant impact on the number of people that were going into the program. Because you also have people that already have M licenses, they're going to be more successful at the end of the program to be able to go back on the road and use those skills.
Okay, thank you for that. And one final one, Madam Chair, through you, just a comment. When you for the media releases, and it's just it baffles my mind with us human nature, I guess. If you look at the one on September 17th, which was the cannabis warrant, it was the one that had the most views on it and the most retweets and the most likes. It's kind of interesting how the the public mind works in some things and what they pass on and stuff. So I just, it's usually either the bad accident, or in this case there was that warrant and stuff like that. It just kind of popped interesting in my mind. But at any rate, thank you very much.
I have a couple of questions, but before I ask them, is there anybody else that would like to raise any questions with Inspector Anderson? Marty?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick question to Inspector Anderson, could you elaborate a little bit more on the role that the local police play in the Quarantine Act in terms, you mentioned checking up on quarantine, people in quarantine. I've had a fair number of questions just out of curiosity, I think more than anything, but knowing that I'm affiliated with the Police Services Board about how that actually works and how that information gets processed and how someone can that quickly show up to determine whether someone's abiding by the rules.
Yeah, I can give you some background into that. So anybody traveling into Canada is obviously has an intake done with CBSA, the Canadian Border Services. The Canadian Border Services then forward those names on to the RCMP. Quarantine officers under the legislation are RCMP members, as well as some other dedicated public health members that they have. It's not local police. So we are not officers under the Quarantine Act. Any police officers act under the authority of Quarantine Act officers, but that's not us. So the only direction that police can do is that which is handed down to us from the quarantine officers. We receive that from the RCMP. So the RCMP will distribute a list of people that are supposed to be complying with quarantine restrictions. We get that list provincially. It's then up to us to sort through and find out which ones are within Brant County and action the ones that are in Brant County. It used to be up until about 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, the police were only forwarded the high risk requests that were forwarded from the quarantine officers. And then we would go physically, an officer would attend and physically check to make sure that that person is abiding by their quarantine restrictions. We've since, in the past week and a half, 2 weeks, we are now getting a list of everyone within the province and our municipality that is supposed to be abiding by those Quarantine Act restrictions. And then it's now up to us, since we've been forwarded that information, as to which ones we action. And in relation to numbers, I haven't looked at the list extensively, Andrew, but what would you say we would have numbers wise on there?
We fluctuate between 1 and 7 people a day to check on. It seems that the number is gradually increasing as this program's gone on for the last 2 weeks.
So does that kind of answer any questions that you were having?
Yes, I think just a follow-up question based on what you're saying. Is there not a disconnect then between you guys being able to sort of use your discretion or randomly check up, I guess, on this list versus what I guess the quarantine officers are checking up on themselves? Because I understand there's a whole phone protocol, right? Like people are checked in on via telephone, and then if there's issues from there, then they would ask you guys to step in and do a visit or something like that?
Honestly, we don't know what the reasonings are for those. That's all done through CBSA and through the quarantine officers. We, again, if we had, if we were acting as quarantine officers, we would be privileged. We have no idea why we're being requested to go and check on that, other than we're going to check to make sure they're abiding by their quarantine. I wouldn't say there's necessarily a disconnect. It would be similar to me directing our officers to go and do something like a focus patrol. It would be the same thing. I need you to go and do this. This is the reasoning behind it, because they're part of the Quarantine Act. But no, we aren't privy to their immigration status or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to mislead in the fact that there seems to be a disconnect. I don't think there is. It's just the fact that we aren't quarantine officers under the Act, but we report back whatever we find to the quarantine officers, and then they then follow that case through.
Thanks.
Is that good, Marty?
Yes, thank you.
Just quickly, Inspector Anderson, on the Highway 24 North Focus Patrol, I just wanted to pass on some comments I received, just how much appreciated it's been to have that focus patrol on Highway 24. Sorry, the doorbell just rang and now the dog's gonna start barking. Yeah, so we've had a lot of good, I personally have had a lot of good comments. I'm sure others have as well about the focus patrol on Highway 24, but also the social media that's followed it as well with the various different charges and stuff. The awareness level that's brought to Highway 24 and all the different charges that whether it's stunt driving, speeding, whatever, almost 1 an hour it seems, has been really well received on this side of 24. I'm not as in communication with folks on the other side, but I'm sure Mayor Bailey's heard the same thing, that's been a really important thing to do and has been well received in our community. So I just wanted to pass that on about 24 about that. And then also on the vehicle noise thing, I'm happy to see that action item being followed up on. And I just wondered, I know we have counselors from wards 1 to 3 being invited. I'm not familiar with those wards, but maybe, or I know the wards, I just don't know what the number, I don't know. Just whatever recommendations come out of that, or whatever discussions come out of that's not going to be specific to certain wards. It'll be for everybody. I know we have noise issues here in our community, so I just wanted to make sure that we're taking into consideration how that might be implemented in all the communities of the county. And I'm not really sure. Councillor Pierce, what's 1 to 3?
Well, Ward 1 is St. George.
Okay.
Ward 2 is North Paris. Ward 3 is South Paris. Ward 4 is Lake Burford, Scotland. Ward 5 is Oakland, Onondaga.
Okay, great. I think that's good that you're following up on that. So I just want to make a comment that's excellent news to see that being followed up on. And my other questions, John has, Councillor Pierce has excellently commented on. So if there's no other, is there any other comments or questions for Inspector Anderson? None? Okay, so if that is the case, then you also have in your package the false alarm summary for September that you've all reviewed and seen what's been issued. 3 people get their 5th warning letter. I don't know what happens after 5. But if no further comments or questions on either of those reports, then we'll have a motion, please, to accept both the detachment commander's report and the false alarms report for information, please. Councillor Pearson, Mayor Bailey, all those in favor? Great, that's carried, thank you. In our package, there's a couple of pieces of information, communications that are labeled A, B, and C. There's information here about the 2021 OPP billing statement that could cure insomnia, perhaps. It's just so complicated and lots of numbers there for the numbers people. But I think most of us have had some insight into how they calculate these numbers and how they come up with the numbers that they have. So I'm not sure if there's any specific discussion on that. It's more for information, I think, for us. The other pieces that we have in here is a notification from the Municipal Policing Bureau about the court security and prisoner transportation grant, which I didn't really realize until I reviewed the billing statement that we even have an allocation for that. So that's being forwarded onwards as part of a part of the 2020 allotment. So that's just an information piece. And then lastly, there's communications from Solicitor General Sylvia Jones about a number of things with respect to anti-racism and mental health, and a number of different initiatives that are being taken into consideration. And I read through it, I don't know if anybody else did, and they talk a lot about the new community the new policing, the Comprehensive Police Services Act, but I don't know yet that we've even seen any of the details of that act come out yet. So they talk about all the things that they're going to do and what's going to happen. For example, with the training that we're going to be required to have, they talk about that we're going to have mandatory training on human rights, systematic racism, as well as diversity, multiracial, multicultural, number of different things, and that's fine. But there's a whole bunch of other pieces within the act that I think needs to come to more clarity as well. But I thought this is a good piece of information to show all the different things that are taking into consideration. I would be interested in learning more about the police hospital transition protocol to see if that can decrease the time that our officers have to spend waiting at the hospital as well. Was there any, John, you've got your hand up in terms of comments on that.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, through you. If we could just scoot back to 8A for just a minute.
Sure.
I guess it's page 40 of our document there. Page 4 of 16, I guess, of that report. Okay, so 8A, in section 1 there, it talks about FTEs. And then the second little paragraph says the equivalent of 87.76 FTEs with the cost of whatever has been excluded from the municipal cost to reflect the average municipal detachment FTEs required to provincially mandated responsibilities eligible for provincial service usage credit. That's quite the paragraph there. My question here is, they're talking 87.76 FTEs. We're not close to that. How does that work as far as the number of FTEs we have here in Brant to the overall, what they're taking off there of 87.76?
Madam Chair, are you, can I just, Councillor Pierce, so you're talking about page 40 of our package?
Correct, yep.
42 of our package.
40. Oh, I've got page 40 at the bottom.
Okay.
It's 8A when it talks about estimate-based service calls and for service cost summary. And then there's it's like a half a page. There's section 1 and section 2. And it talks of total base services and calls for service calls are based on the cost of salary, benefits, support. And the paragraph I'm speaking of is in section 1, the second paragraph there. I'm just curious because I know we don't have 87 FTEs, and I'm just curious as to how that equivalent of 87 FTEs, 87.76 FTEs that they're excluding, how does that work with us for Brant County, because we have less than that. I would think that would be a benefit to us, but I'm curious as to overall, how do they work with, we'll call it detachments with less than that number of FTEs?
Before Inspector Anderson, I just want to make sure I understand, John or Councillor Pierce, your question, because I think what it's saying is that it's removed those costs because
Yep.
those are the shared policing, right? So
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, because as I say, I think it works in our benefit because we have less than 87 FTEs. I'm just curious, is that just blanket across the board? So potentially we could have detachments out there that have, let's just pick a number of 100, but they're only taking 87 off. I'm just curious as to how that's factors in. I know they use a lot of averages across the board for other things. I just want to confirm that in fact this is one of those, because this would be one of those that works to our advantage of having a smaller detachment.
Inspector Anderson, if I don't want to put you on the spot, we can always follow up with the question and come back to that as well.
Yeah, and that would be my request, Madam Chair. Yeah,
Okay.
From our Municipal Policing Bureau. Normally these notes in relation to the billing are more provincially driven, not attachment driven, which I think Councillor Pierce you're speaking to as it is.
Yeah.
But I would request I can follow up on that piece and get Municipal Policing Bureau to actually respond to that. But when they're talking about the total base services, they are going back to the reduction that we saw in base services this year is actually at an all-time low for the OPP is what we're seeing. So, yeah, I can certainly follow up on that with MPB and get an email response that I can then distribute to yourself, Madam Chair, and then you can forward it on to the PSB members. But just to clarify so that I know what the question is for MPB is in relation to if that helps us more in relation to branch detachment.
Well, I guess in essence, that's kind of where I was going, but I'm just curious, that 87.76 figure, is that across the board regardless of how many FTEs a detachment would have? For example, for us in Brant, we've got less than that. So that's an advantage to us because we're getting that much reduction, so to speak, or excluded, as opposed to a detachment that has, let's just say, 100. So they're only getting that 87 off. I'm just curious because I know, and I appreciate the way they do it with a lot of averages across the board, which I feel is good based on population and that sort of thing. But this doesn't seem to me that it's based off of population. It's just based off a formula of how many FTEs they're saying are required to sufficiently give service per se. I don't know if I've just confused it more or not. I'm not sure.
Probably. It's 10
Thanks.
after 10. And I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm wondering, this time, I was looking at the minutes. Last year at this time, we had someone from municipal policing just give a quick overview of the billing statement. I believe it was Peter Marshall that did it last year. I don't know who would do it, but is it of something, even if it's just a 15-minute for our next meeting to go through and explain and ask some of these questions, would that be of interest to the members?
I think it'd be of interest, and like I say, it's not a huge deal if we can't get it answered. The question that I have, I was just more curious. That's all, how that worked.
So if we invited, so just that way, Inspector Anderson's not having to go back and forth with trying to find answers or trying to get back and forth to us. I just suggestion, if it's not something that's of interest, we don't have to do it either, but they could be included. We could invite them for our November meeting just to kind of review it, and then that way we could ask our questions specific to the billing model. What does everyone, thumbs up, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that helpful, Inspector Anderson, then?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could just speak to this a little bit more. This is speaking to the base policing costs.
Yeah.
So the billing is broken down: base policing costs, calls for service, and overtime. So this is explaining how they've provincially come up with the base policing cost numbers. So this section itself is speaking to what they're removing because of the provincial mandate that we have as well. So the municipality only pays for the municipal policing part. They don't pay for the provincial responsibilities. So when we look at our billing in Brant County gets billed approximately 38% of the total policing cost for that municipality, but the municipality only pays for approximately 38%. So I think what they're talking about here is that provincial, because all of the billing is based on the provincial numbers, and Brant County's percentage of those provincial numbers and what's billed to the municipality. So it gets quite confusing. But this 87, I just want to be clear on our Zoom call today that 87.76 in no way is speaking to that number of FTEs associated to Brant County. That's trying to say the provincial costs associated with that number of FTEs was approximately just shy of $15 million that's not being billed to municipalities because of provincial responsibilities provincially, not in relation to Brant County. But it's always a good idea to have Pete Marshall anytime we have billing to go over and answer those questions, because he'll be the most knowledgeable on all of that stuff for everyone.
Perfect.
Perfect. So Nancy, could you please just make a note that we need to invite someone, whether it's Peter or somebody, to come to our next meeting so that we can include that on the agenda?
Certainly, I'll work with Inspector Anderson on that as well.
Perfect, thanks. Jim, you had your hand up. Are you good, Jim?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Inspector Anderson, can you just confirm how many full-time positions we currently have on establishment now, and how many of them are occupied versus vacant?
We don't have any vacant currently. We have 54 constable positions. Aside to Brant, we have 5 sergeants, 1 staff, 1 inspector. And that's also publicly accessible in the Brant County Business Plan.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the communications that we've received? Seeing none for now, we'll follow up with the OPP billing model for next meeting. And we'll see if there's additional information coming out from Solicitor General Jones. But if that's good, then we'll have a motion, please, to receive those 3 items of communication for information. Mayor Bailey, seconder. Member Verhey, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. We have under other business, Inspector Anderson alluded to it earlier in her report about the focus patrol feedback. Inspector Anderson, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think I covered it off in the detachment commander's report there, but the suggestion, what I would like to do is continue with the community focused patrols. I think we had great feedback from the community and good feedback from our officers in relation to the program that we ran in June. We specifically did that because of COVID, and our statistics were all over the map during COVID time. We weren't able to rely on them too much to be predictive. So that was really an initiative that we did, but because of the feedback and everything that we got, we would like to run that again. So I guess I'm looking for input from this board, if the board would like to provide those locations to us this time. And then however the board wishes to solicit that information from the community. Eventually, once we get to a point of being able to reestablish our community policing committees, when we can do committees again in the county, our community policing committees will really be the location that we're looking at gleaning this information from for community focused patrols. But in lieu of that, I think this would be more fitting to come to the police service board to look for those locations for November.
So is everybody okay with the police service board soliciting feedback from council and others, I guess, if that's appropriate, to then be able to summarize and forward to Inspector Anderson? Yeah.
And when would she need it by, Madam Chair?
Well, I'll offer to work with Inspector Anderson offline here, figure out what that entails, and then whether that's a communication that we send out to counselors for their feedback to come back into somebody, whoever will figure that out, the details, by a certain date. Like, everybody needs deadlines, so that feedback can get to council or to Inspector Anderson. I guess what I'm hearing is that we'd like to funnel it through the PSB rather than everything indirectly going from individuals to Inspector Anderson. So if this is funneled through the PSB and then prioritize and summarize, that would help Inspector Anderson as well. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay, thumbs up. So we'll carry on with that then, and if there's something on email to follow up on, then we'll, between Nancy, myself, and Inspector Anderson, we'll talk offline about the process and then solicit that feedback. Councillor Pierce?
Yeah, just as FYI, Madam Chair, Council, we do have a couple meetings this week that will all be together. So if you want me to pop something in, then I'll be happy to do that as well.
Great. Okay. So then if we go into the updates, Robin, do you have an update on the detachment building?
Through you, Madam Chair, I do. There was a problem with the sewage pump, which has delayed the mechanical contractors from finishing their work. They're still planning a November move-in date, but just waiting for confirmation from the contractors on when their work will be finished so they can schedule the move date.
Inspector Anderson, I suspect you guys are raring to go.
We are very much looking forward to, especially with COVID, getting to a larger space. Yes.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I know at the last meeting, there was discussion around possibly making it move a few staff out at first just to have a presence in the building rather than everybody all at one shot. I'm just wondering, was there further conversation to that? Is that something that has been discussed and potentially happen to get somebody into that building for a few different reasons, I guess. The main one being, I think that we've got a building that's sitting out there with nobody in it, so security purposes, even though there's alarms and stuff like that. Curious if that conversation was had. I don't know if that's to the inspector or to Robin or both, or.
Through you, Madam Chair, I haven't been involved in those conversations. I'm not sure if Inspector Anderson has been. Maybe she could provide more information.
Through you, Madam Chair, the whole thing is we have to make sure that it's ready for occupancy, and we have a permit for occupancy, so it's safe for our officers to go in. So truly, until we have that date, which we're still waiting for, those are all still options that we have. It just depends on what that date is and what the urgency is going to be to get in there. There's a lot of moving parts, such as movers and security clearances for movers and for folks, and there's a lot of moving parts, but really we need to get to that solid move-in date that we don't have yet.
The sewage backup threw a monkey wrench into your timing, I'm sure. That the last we spoke, I think, Councillor Pierce, to your point, we were looking for that kind of soft move and then gradually get everybody over. But this sounds like this has thrown a curveball into those plans for now until you get that fixed and signed off on.
And through you, Madam Chair, exactly. We were anticipating that there wouldn't be any major deficiencies from the walkthrough. So moving people in stages is once we have the occupancy permit, and there's still little things that need to be fixed. But if we can't bring water away from that detachment, that doesn't allow any of our officers to work out of there.
Thank you.
Mayor Bailey? Oh, you're on mute.
Inspector Anderson, I understood those problems were fixed. The sewage issues. Is that not true?
No, through you, Madam Chair, the last information we had was that it was going to be delayed for 3 to 4 weeks. We were waiting for the subcontractors and the mechanical side to get back to Claire to give them a timeline. But the pump itself, I believe the pump itself, the issues have been rectified, but now there's a bunch of work that needs to be done after the fact once that pump is working.
Okay. I'd just like to remind you that the cornerstone on the building says 2020, and I'd hate to have to get out there with a chisel. So please make sure that we're in there before the end of the year, Inspector, because my chiseling days are almost over.
Yeah, and Mayor, through you, Madam Chair, really we're in the hands of the county right now with that. So it's the OPP side of the house is all ready to go with our IT and everything. We're just waiting for the rest of the things to be concluded by the county.
Well, you couldn't.
Everything powered to get in there by the end of the year. Trust me.
You couldn't be in better hands. So we'll get everything working, I'm sure. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Pierce, is there any communications from council or updates that you want to share with us?
As I kind of alluded to earlier, just it was brought up at our last council meeting, just thanks for the OPP's involvement in that raid, which I spoke to earlier. Other than that, no, we're all good.
Great. Marty, is there anything from OAPSB Zone 4?
Not at this particular moment. I did get confirmation the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for January 20th of 2021. And at this point, it's going to be hosted virtually. So not much news. You guys, I'm assuming, saw the election of a Zone 4 executive position. But other than that, there's been no real action items or discussion on any front.
Okay, that's great. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Planning Committee, I've put an update in my report about that. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions about it, but it's suspended, but they're trying to get some work done in the back. Long story short, it's suspended with all other committees, but they're trying to get some work done in the background to get going so that hopefully we can start up in the new year without having lost too much ground. The person that had been hired, that was part of our PSB grant that Inspector Anderson had accessed, had been redeployed to other county priorities. So at some point she'll come back to the project, and we won't be penalized for being underspent on that project moving forward. Should we apply for new? My understanding is we won't be. So I won't go into any more details because it's written down, unless anybody has any questions on that. So I decided to put together the this memo just because there was a few things. I just thought it would be easier for everybody to have it summarized versus trying to talk it through. So I'm not sure if there's any questions on the report I submitted to you, or anything that you want me to discuss and further. Let me know now. Obviously, the towing we'll talk about separately here shortly. Hearing none. That's good. So I think we've got our agenda covered here. So I think now we need to go, we will need to move in camera to discuss some specifics about towing. Before we do, Nancy, do we need a motion to go into camera?
Yes, we'll let Mayor Bailey speak. We do need a motion to go in camera to talk about, you said you wanted to talk about identifiable individuals. So that's a personal matter. And you wanted to have Adam Crozier join the meeting, so we'll invite him to stay for that as well.
That's right. And Mayor Bailey, were you going to add anything to that then? Oh, sorry, you're on.
I was just going to move that we go in camera. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Mayor Bailey's moved. Member Brown is seconded. All in favor? Okay, so we'll just give a moment at that meeting either. So I think you're at the disadvantage too of not having missed some of those meetings.
Yeah, I only missed the one where the contract, I'm sure, was reviewed and read through, where it was distributed. So I don't have that, but I was around for the June meeting. But like I said, I think we should just be very clear on what we're called to do. And if you read the report from Adam, kind of, in my opinion, looks like there's not much we can do if either party doesn't do what they're supposed to do. So I feel like it's just another task that is going to waste time.
Sorry, Councilor Pierce.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you. As was stated there, the current contract, as we'll call it, is through until December 31st of 2020. My gut is telling me that we go back to the board with the suggestions of they need to have a bigger board of directors. They need to be more diverse in the board of directors. It is a contract, so they need to uphold their responsibilities in the contract, as to Marty's point there. And we leave it at that. I don't think we can, I'm not in the mood to just drop it today, but I feel that by December 31st, we can get them in a better place. And then I must agree with Member Verhey that I'm really leaning towards, as of December 31st, we help them get there, they take it from there.
Just a comment, and Adam, before Member Brown, we don't have any contractual obligations or contractual ability to influence their governance structure or how they're structured as an organization. Like, that's we've made advice and suggestions, but there's nothing that contractually we can tell them that they have to broaden their board or give them that direction. That's advice perhaps, but it's not there's nothing in our contract that requires that. So I'm just, Adam, how do you feel about that direction that's being suggested?
You're right, Madam Chair. There's no sort of direct ability to influence their governance, but certainly this is a contract with an incorporated body. If you come to them and say, we would like to see changes to your governance, or we won't renew the contract, that's perfectly well within your rights to do so as another independent body. So.
Okay, great. Member Brown?
Just to follow up, when I was first introduced to the contract and since then, I've been fairly strongly, or of the strong view that we should not be part of this. I have concerns over the liabilities, and having met with them, I feel that there's a definite need for a period of adjustment. I don't know how long, to give them in order to get their house in order. I do feel that there needs to be some changes and update themselves as far as positions, maybe what their board looks like. Police services boards being involved in contracts like this, my understanding from talking to the OASPC is that this was commonplace 20 years ago, but there's very few of them now, and they really don't feel that there's a place for us in this contract as well. The best part of the meeting was to hear that they are operating well with the OPP, and the OPP are going by their current policies, as Member Verhea stated. So maybe there's not a long-term need for this. My concern is the period of adjustment, that we try and communicate effectively with them to allow them to try and get in order so that we can have something that's as stable a transition as possible.
Section 17 of the contract, and Marty, I know you're going to get a copy of that when Adam forwards it to you. It says the contractor agrees at its own expense to hire an independent third party to inspect the operations of its members and supply a report to the County of Brant Police Service Board. That could be the governance piece right there. That could be someone that they then have brought in to say, hey, we're recommending that you do this, this, and this. There's a number of ways that that could be invoked, I think. And then 18 is the reporting requirements. Just looking at time, and I know John's got some deadlines here. So what I'm hearing a mixed bag of opinions. So I don't hear any, I hear some cancel. I hear some cancel at some point. I hear some renew with a short-term timeline, but with some feedback back to them to get their house in order. Where does everybody landing here? Councillor Pierce?
Madam Chair, when is our next meeting as Police Services Board?
November 17th.
Okay, might I suggest then I would put a motion forward that we go back to the towing group with the statement of, as we discussed, that they need to look at their board of directors. They need to expand their board of directors. They need to adhere to things that are in the contract. We haven't had a report from them, to my knowledge, in ever. So we need to have a report from them as what's stated in the contract. They need to expand, actively expand their board of directors, and have that information back to us by our next meeting in November, because the current contract is expiring on December the 31st. And at this point in time, we're not looking at renewing it. I'm not sure how to reword that or whatever to Nancy and Adam there, but I guess Nancy, you're the one on the pen there. But as I say, my motion is to go back to the towing group with our suggestions of expanding their board of directors to adhere to their responsibilities within the contract, aka a report to us as to the previous year, and have that back to us by our next meeting, because the current contract expires December the 31st. And at this point, we're not looking to expend after that.
Is that a seconder, Mayor Bailey? Yeah. So that would be a letter from PSB to the towing group outlining those concerns. Councilor Pierce, is that what you're thinking?
That is correct.
Yep.
That way, that gives them the opportunity. That's a month away. There's no reason that they shouldn't be able to get something together and back to us within that time. I don't feel that there should be an issue with it anyway, especially after the discussions that you and Member Brown had with them regarding the fact of, hey, you know, there's obligations in this contract that you have as a towing group, so that they're already aware of that. So I think if they have that back to us by our next meeting, that would, to me, give us a better indication of whether they want to make themselves better.
Yeah, whether they're serious about that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Member Verhey?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Pierce. I really like that. I'm just wondering if at the end of your sort of proposed motion there, you were talking about, and we don't plan on extending this contract. Does that not decentivize them to do nothing?
I would
Just
agree with
until
that.
then and just say, okay, fine, we throw up our hands. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
If you allow us to word it, Councillor Pierce, that it would indicate that, you know, that feedback is going to be contingent upon our renewal.
Yes.
But that we're not automatically making a decision right now about canceling it, or that we're looking to cancel it, but maybe your ability, Brent Towing Group, your ability to get back to us with this information by this time is contingent upon our ability to consider a renewal.
That's exactly what I said.
Okay. Friendly amendment. Is that okay, Mayor Bailey? Yeah. Okay, is there any other questions? So Councillor Pierce has put forward a motion, Mayor Bailey seconded. Is there any other discussion on that motion of writing a letter back to the Brent Towing Group, outlining our concerns and our recommendations, asking for feedback by the November 17th board meeting for us to review, and then depending on what kind of feedback we get, we can then decide which path to take from there.
Yeah, it'll factor into renewal. Yeah.
Mayor Bailey?
I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Sure. So is there any other discussion on that? Okay, so then recorded vote. All those in favor of the motion as is.
Question.
Who's asking a question? Member Verhey.
Sorry, just a dumb little question. What's the difference between a recorded vote and a not recorded vote?
Mayor Bailey? Nancy?
So in the minutes, we will have down each person's name and how they voted for or against the motion. Understood.
Thank you.
Okay, so try again. All those in favor of the motion as. Okay. Carried. Nancy, you got all that?
I think it was unanimous.
Yes,
it was definitely unanimous. All 5 recorded in favor. Okay, I don't even know where my agenda is, but there we are. So
Madam Chair, sorry, my apologies. I need to drop off now.
Okay, see ya.
Have a great day, all.
Bye, John.
Bye, John.
Talk to you tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Nancy and Adam on the follow-up then to the Brent Towing Group, if you don't mind, Adam, helping us out with that. So we can get that to them right away, so we can get that action item. We have a virtual education session next week, Tuesday, 27th, 9 a.m. I believe it is. The calendar appointment's already gone out. It'll be over Zoom as well. And then our next regular scheduled board meeting, which I believe would likely be Zoom, because we talked earlier, council's looking to do the same, will be 9 a.m. Tuesday, November 17th. Inspector Anderson, are you able to join us for the training session as well then?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. All right, if there's anything else, then we'll have a motion to adjourn. Or, yeah, motion, Nancy, or just we're adjourning?
Just someone to motion it and then we're good. Thank you.
Member Brown's motioned it. 11:23. So have a great day, everybody. We powered through the agenda. Thank you very much, and have a great day, and we'll talk to everybody again.